Psych 240, Section 23. I think there's only one section this semester. I'm Bruce Bradway. That's me right there. Okay. And this is where I am right now, Lost Nation, Iowa. And this is my telephone number if you need to get a hold of me. I do have office hours. Now, some people confuse office hours with I have to go to office hours. That's not what it's for. If you have a question about something or you need to talk to me, then I have office hours Monday and Tuesday, 3 to 5 Mountain Standard Time, and Wednesday and Thursday, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. If you need to get a hold of me any other time, we can make an appointment and I'll be glad to talk to you about whatever. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, however, this is the Zoom address, and you can just click on that and it will take you to the Zoom. Of course, if you click on this and it's not between any of these times, I won't be online. But I will be, I should be, I'll try to be. I'll try to fill my office hours. I usually grade and do all kinds of fun stuff. Wait a second, let me make this bigger. There we go. Okay. Anyway, that's it right there. And here's my email address. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me if it's not during office hours. So let's talk about what this class is all about. There's a textbook right there. Arnett and Jensen, actually. I think we have a new edition. I think we have a fourth edition out. It's not up here. No, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if there's a fourth edition. Um, Mine says Arnett and Jensen, so I'm just wondering if I left an author out or if this is an older text. Um, the two authors, one of them is the father, the other is the daughter, I believe. Anyway, there's 13 chapters in this textbook, so we will cover all 13. So the question has to be, how in the world do you ever pass this class? Well, I'm going to be grading you on 3 different elements. First of all, there will be a quiz for each chapter, and each quiz is worth 15 points. You will need to write a paper about something that you found interesting. Now, if you can't find anything interesting in a 500-page book dealing with human growth and development, this is something that you are currently going through and have gone through all of your life. If you can't find anything interesting, then my goodness, what do you find interesting besides video games, of course? I do teach a class on video games and social media. So your library paper is worth 100 points. It's due the beginning of April. So hopefully you can find something that is interesting enough to write your paper on. It can be about anything. Anything that's in the textbook is you are free to write a paper about. And the last is your discussion questions. Discussion questions, I'm just looking for you to think. I try to give you discussion questions that you can't find the answer in the book. You're going to have to come up with the answer out of your own mind, and that's what I'm trying to make you do. I'm trying to get you guys to think. That is the essence of learning, is being able not only to repeat what you hear, but also to come up with new ideas. And actually, that's what education really should be about. Um, I present my material in several different ways. There is a PowerPoint um, that is online. There will also be a lecture, and that's what this is. This is your first week's lecture. Um, yeah, that's what this is. So you can either listen to it or read it. You can certainly, I expect you to read the textbook. I say that knowing that nobody reads anymore, but the textbook is there if you need to look something up. So you can read it. You can read it yourself. You can listen to me talk about it. or you can do one or the other and take notes. That's the three forms of learning: tactile, oral, and visual. So there you go. Hopefully you can get all these answers. Now, I call these quizzes, chapter 13 chapter quizzes tests. I need to take that out, but I don't know if I can. No, it won't go. Okay. Oh, I'm glad I did that. At 15 points apiece. Okay, I call them quizzes. I don't. They're not really quizzes. They're not timed. I don't care if you use notes. I don't care if you use the book. I don't care if you Google it. Be careful if you Google it. A lot of times Google isn't thinking as a psychologist. They're thinking as a as a database. Um, I just want you to learn this stuff, and that's one of the reasons why I give you the quizzes. Okay, I expect you to think. I expect you to learn to think, and that's up to me. I have to teach you how to think. One of the problems with high school, and you may have noticed this, one of the problems in high school is they expect you to repeat everything that they tell you, as if there is only one answer to every question. But the reality is, we live in a world that is very complex, and there tends to be more than one answer to any question. Now, when you're studying psychology, things keep changing all the time. One of the things we're learning, what did we learn lately? Wait a minute. Um, One of the things that we have learned within the last 10 or 15 years is that humans are a compendium of what they eat and the environment that they live in. We are made up of we have more bacteria and viruses in our bodies than we have cells in our bodies. We are the bacteria that we maintain. Now, one of the interesting things about that, and of course, we've got all these autoimmune problems. We've got, alcoholism and drugs. We're uh, marijuana is being legalized all over the United States. One of the things that we need to think about, this is just between you and me and all of your friends, is that whatever you do, whatever you ingest, whatever happens to you, that's going to stick with you for the rest of your life. You can change your metabolism. You can change, if you're an alcoholic. I've been around alcoholics all my life. I'm certainly not. Well, I don't even drink, but I've been around alcoholics all my life. And one of the things I can tell you is that they change what they are and who they are, not only in the brain, but it also changes their metabolism. And that's one of the reasons why you see so much diabetes in people who were drinkers at a younger age. So what's going on? Well, we set the person that we're going to be all through our lives. So you break your arm when you're 7 years old, and now it doesn't quite bend quite right. It's going to be like that for the rest of your life. It's the same way with anything that you put in your body, especially some of the more destructive things like cocaine or methamphetamines. Those things can change everything. They change your brain structure. They change your metabolism. They rot your teeth. I mean, this is something that is going to stick with you all your life. Why am I talking about this? Okay. Anyway, between you and me, we need to decide that what we want to be when we grow up. I'm 73 years old. I decided when I was in high school that I wanted to live a long, long time. That I wanted to be an athlete. I decided that the best way to do that was to be an athlete and to eat as healthy as I possibly could. Not always easy because, I was an enlisted person in the military, and we didn't have a whole lot of money. So good food was expensive even back in the 70s and 80s. So I am the product of what I have done in the past. Everybody is the product of what they have done in the past. And if you have done some negative things like smoking and drinking and potentially taking hard drugs, then you're going to have to deal with that consequence later on. One of the things that we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of people who are dying in their 60s and 70s from diseases that they shouldn't have yet. That should be an old age problem. And why are they doing this? Well, a lot of times, the Alzheimer's, early onset Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. These are diseases of old farts. These are diseases of old people. You shouldn't develop it in your 30s. How in the world does that happen? Well, it could be a genetic situation. Probably not, but it probably has to do with cocaine. And when we're dealing with somebody like Michael J. Fox, love the man. I thought he was a wonderful actor, but he developed his Parkinson's disease in his late 30s. How do you do that? Well, you do that because you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, like snorting cocaine. And cocaine changes the structure of your brain. Okay, let's get go beyond this. Okay, so how do you pass the class? You take the quizzes, you write your paper, and you do your discussion questions. What am I looking for in a discussion question? I'm looking for your thoughts. The answer is not in the book, I can assure you, because I didn't ask a question that comes out of the book. So you're gonna have to come up with it on your own. As long as it's an original answer, I will give you full credit. Don't chintz on it. Don't give me a one sentence answer. I want to know that you thought. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your thoughts. Yeah, that's right. In high school, they wouldn't let you think. They made you just repeat everything. But I'm not going to do that. We are in college now, and I'm going to teach you how to think, by golly. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, there's an explanation of your library paper, how you write it. Okay, there's where all the discussions are due. Okay, the one thing I need to tell you guys that I don't want you to tell anybody else is that I do not count off for late work. If you decide to turn everything in the day before everything is before the last day of class, go ahead and do it. That's going to piss me off. I'm going to have to grade all your stuff. I'm going to have to grade all your stuff, and I might get a little pissed off. So yeah, and I do get angry sometimes, and I do lose my temper. So if I were you, I'd turn it in as soon as possible. But I don't count off for late work. So if you have a problem in your family, a ceremony comes up that you have to attend, you have to drive to Albuquerque or something, and you miss a deadline. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't count off for late work. It's the same way with the library paper. There's 30 of you, okay? That's a lot of reading to do. I am an old English teacher, and I do count lines. You need to write a 5-page paper that doesn't include an introduction page and a bibliography at the end. I have 5 pages of text. That's what I'm looking for. But the other thing to remember is I right now my count is 87. I have 87 students in all my classes. And I have 7 people in writing. I'm the one that teaches the 497 class, which is Advanced Readings in Psychology. It's a thesis class, and they write 30-page papers. Okay, and there's 7 of them. So okay, you can add all this stuff. If everybody turns everything in at the last minute, I'm in a world of hurt, as it were. Okay, so that's about it. And I have turned my syllabus in to show Dean Blackwater, and don't worry, that he'll get that thing signed. All right, here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm fairly easygoing until I've got 30 papers to read on the last day of class. Then I get a little grouchy. I get a little grouchy sometimes anyway. Come on, I'm married. Where am I? There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, this is chapter one. Chapter one. Okay, study of human development. So what is the study of human development? Well, we start off with we look at the conception to birth. You're a zygote first. That's when the sperm impregnates the egg. You become a zygote, and then as it multiplies, it becomes an embryo, and then eventually you become a fetus. What does fetus mean? Fetus means that the individual is potentially viable. This is a fetus, actually. This is still a fetus. Is it viable? Well, no, it can't live outside the womb. Um, Fetuses. I worked in medicine for 30 years, and I worked in neonatal intensive care units. I was a laboratory technician. I drew blood from anything that was there. Patients, not the nurses. I tried to stay away from the nurses. Okay, but yeah, a viable fetus is one that can live outside the womb, and that happens at about the 20th week. So if we can get a fetus that's 20 weeks old, we can usually do a pretty good job of saving the baby. Newborn. This is my daughter. That's my grandson. He's 10 years old right now. He'll be 11 in June. There's the father. This is my daughter. Anyway, so that's birth to 1 month, and he is a neonate because he's a newborn baby, a neonate. He still looks like that, strangely enough. Anyway, you're going to see more pictures of him. There he is again. Okay. He's an infant from 1 month to 1 year, or she, whichever the case may be. There he is, little Mr. Smiley, and there he is at as a toddler, 1 year to 2 years, carrying his Uncle Russell's Coke can around. There was no Coke in it, I can assure you. He would have spilled it. There he is as a preschooler, 2 to 6 years. He went to McDonald's one time and decided that he needed a hat, just like at Burger King. So he took his Happy Meal box and he put it on his head, as goofy as he is. Then he decided he wanted his French fries and ketchup, so he poured himself a whole pool of ketchup. What a goofball kid. And there he is. This is 2 years ago. He was in the Santa run. He was a polar bear, as you can plainly see. So he is in the 5th grade. He'll be in 6th grade next year if he passes. He's doing really well. Adolescent, age 12 to 20. This is not him, of course. He'll be 11. This is somebody else. Young adult, 20 to 40. This is where most of you are. You're between 20 and 40. Maybe you're not a policeman, but you're somewhere in between 20 and 40. If you're older than 40 years old, you're a middle-aged adult. It's considered middle age, 40 to 60. And I would say she's a little bit closer to 60 than she is to 40, since her hair is all white. Young old adult. This is where I am. I'm a young old adult. I'm much better looking than he is. 60 to 80 years. And then the old, and I'm approaching that. I'm 73 years old, so I'm approaching the old. I don't know that I will be at Dene College teaching when I'm an old adult, but I'm teaching right now. Okay. Diversity of human development. Human development encompasses many different fields. It encompasses genetics, of course. We try to figure out if we put this mother and this father together, what we will get. A lot of times, usually it doesn't really make much difference. We just get whatever we get. But when we're dealing with a disease, of course, this becomes extremely important. And we're going to talk about, when we talk about genetics, we're going to talk about sickle cell anemia. and fascinating stuff. Um, I had a mother and I had a father, obviously. And of course, we weren't looking for thalassemia. Thalassemia is a blood disease. It makes you anemic. But we're not going to really talk about thalassemia. If you want to talk about that, you'll have to go over to the biology department. Molecular biology is part of human development. He's actually doing a CBC. He's doing a blood scan, and he's looking at that's a white cell right there, and these are all red cells. So he's looking at all those. He's got a lot of anemic cells. This is what they're supposed to look like, and that one, it doesn't have enough hemoglobin in it, and neither do these. And that one's a little weak too. Anyway, this is what I used to do when I was a laboratory technician. I told you I worked in medicine for 30 years, and that's one of the things that I did. Neuroscience, looking at the brain and the structure of the brain. Nutrition, I just talked about this. We are what we eat. We have been saying that for decades, and now we are very much aware that if we don't eat properly when we are children, then we are setting ourselves up for problems later on. And I have seen this in my own family. I have two nieces who ate very poorly when they were children. They would only eat cheese pizza, Jimmy Dean sausage cakes. They drank Coke and they ate French fries, and that was it. That's all they ate. And now both of them are suffering from autoimmune diseases. They're in their 40s, and they're both suffering from autoimmune diseases, really strange ones too. So hey, it's you got a picky eater, that's fine as long as they get everything that they need. Um, and they carry this into their teens. They carry this into their adolescence. Their mother carried whenever she visited my mom, this is my sister, she would carry a tub of fry grease so that she could make her babies French fries. As strange as that might piss my mother off, their grandmother really made my mother mad because she was a nurse and she knew that this is not a good thing. Embryology, looking at the structure of conception, from conception to birth. Medicine, of course, doctors and nurses. Computer science is part of human development now that we have it. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them, when I was an undergraduate, a computer looked like it was the size of a desk you had to key punch things, punch cards. You had punch cards, and that's the way it worked. But of course, now that we have the internet and computers have become so compact, and I'm teaching online, of course. Computer science is extremely important to just about everything, accumulating information and working with statistics and whatnot. Cognitive science, as a psychologist, that's one of the things we look at. How does the brain work? What kind of thoughts are we dealing with here? Psychology, of course, that's our field, my field. Sociology is part of it as well. Gerontology has to do with aging, the process of aging. And if you look at, I just came back from my 50th college reunion. What was it? 2 summers ago. And there were only about 30 of us. We graduated a class of about 230, and there were only 30 people that came back for the 50-year reunion. About half of us were dead. Half of them were dead. And you can look at, there are lots of different factors as to why. There were automobile accidents and whatnot, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, a lot of different reasons why people died. But the people that died younger are the people that were working in fields that they didn't really like. So that's something to think about. Why am I still alive? Because I enjoy doing whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's medicine or stocking shelves. I was in the military for 12 years. I always enjoy everything I do. I especially enjoy teaching. That's why I'm still teaching at age 73. Epidemiology, we saw this with COVID-19. We needed to come up with a vaccine very, very rapidly, and we were able to do it. Thank you, Donald Trump, for doing something right. Um, and it's too bad that he didn't tell everybody to get their shots. But this is really important. And now, of course, we keep having new variants. I think the last variant is the Omicron XBB dot 15 is the last variant that has come out. How important is this? Well, it's really, really important if you're susceptible to those viruses. Cultural studies, of course, that's important. Understanding cultures, different cultures. I know your culture is important to you, but you can imagine that everybody's culture is important to them, and it isn't just indigenous cultures that are important. It's all cultures that are important. So you can slam bang people around and talk negative about them all you want, but you got to remember, it's part of their culture, and you can't reject that. Anthropology, this is what Dr. Ami teaches. Philosophy. I've always found philosophy just fascinating. I'm not sure. These are not all comedians. Well, there's an actor. There's a comedian, Steve Martin. Brilliant. He actually has a degree in philosophy. T.S. Eliot was a poet. Richard Gere, of course, is an actor. Boris Pasternak was an author. Not sure who Lena Del Rey is. I guess she's an actress. There's Pauline Kael is a film critic. Anyway. Theology, the study of religions. Theo meaning religion, theology. Linguistics. I taught classes in linguistics, as painful as that was. I was my bachelor's degree is in English. Economics. This is what those crazy business people do. History. I love history. I've got a degree in political science. So there you go. I believe that if we ignore what happened in the past, then we're going to have a lot of trouble. You guys talk a lot about the long walk. The long walk is extremely important. That's part of your culture. It's also part of history, but most people in the United States do not know it even occurred. Um, and I know it's part of your culture. And if that's part of if your culture has a historical aspect to it. All cultures have an historical aspect to it, but if it's part of if it's part of your history, people need to understand what that was. Um, Ugly part of the past. Culture, the total pattern of a group's customs, beliefs, art, and technology. This is at a powwow in Montana. I used to teach at Fort Belknap College, which is now Ani Nakota College. But this is the Hayes Powwow, the famous Hayes Powwow from Montana. Population growth and change, total fertility rate. In a population, the number of births per woman is the total fertility rate. Developed countries, most of the affluent countries in the world are developed countries. They encompass about 18% of the total world population, which means that developing countries, there's less wealth there. There's more poverty, but there is more infant mortality. About 82% of the world's population live in developing countries. So what would be a developed country? Well, the European countries are all developed countries. Russia would probably be considered a developed country. China, um, Where else? Australia, the United States, and Canada. Mexico, it's right there in the middle somewhere. But a lot of the South American countries are still developing countries. A lot of the African countries are still developing countries. A lot of the South Asian countries are still developing countries. Indonesia. Trying to think of some other places. Anyway, developing countries. 82% of the population. India would be considered a developing country. I just got a call yesterday from one of my old students who's from Bangladesh, and he has had to go back because his mother was sick. And we were talking about it yesterday. He considers his country a developing country. Two reasons the United States follows a different demographic path. Total fertility rate is higher than most developed countries in the United States. The United States allows more legal immigration than most developed countries and also has millions of undocumented immigrants. Okay, so the United States is a little bit different than most of the developed countries around the world. But the other thing about the United States, and this is something that most people don't realize, just because somebody's white doesn't mean they're from the same place as their white next door neighbor. We have a lot of diversity in the United States. Not only do we have minorities, but we also, even the white population, everybody comes from someplace different. Example, my wife's people come from Scotland, and my people come from England and France primarily. So are we different? Well, our culture was different, but now, of course, we're all Americans. Her family's been in the United States probably for 300 or 400 years. My family has been in the United States for over 400 years. And of course, her people are from the South and my people are from the North. So despite the fact that we are both from the same white structure, we're different. And that's part of the American diversity, is the fact that so many people from so many different places have come together to form a country. Projected ethnic changes in the United States population to 2050. This is what it looked like in 2010. 65% of the population were white. Asian Americans, what was it, about 5%? Others, that's you guys, that's about 2%. Latinos, 16%. African Americans at 12%. Now, what's projected for 2050? African Americans won't change. However, the white Americans are going to be a minority. They're only going to be 46% of the population is going to be white. 30% are going to be Hispanic. And 8% are going to be, this is projected, of course, 8% are going to be Asian. Now, if we look at right now, this is as close as I could get. Right now, oh, that's under 19. Okay, 60%, what do we have? 2010, it's 65%. Wait a minute, I got it over here, don't I? Okay, 2000 is 69%. As you can see, it's going down 9% in the white population. It's gone up 4% in the black population, 0.4%, I'm sorry. And there's you guys. You guys are that little squiggly, that little blue line in there. And the Hispanic population has gone up almost 6% since 2000. That's only 20 years. Well, it's 19 years. Anyway, what's the yellow? Two other races. You guys are who's the blue? Oh, that's American Indian. Yeah, there you go. There you go. 0.7%. You guys haven't changed since then. Okay. There you go. 40% of the world's population lives on less than $2 per day. Now, you can try that if you like, but if you go to Burger King, I don't think you're going to be able to buy anything. Maybe not even any French fries. Wow. Okay, so you're going to get pretty hungry if you live in Chinle. 80% of the world's population lives on a family income of less than $6,000 per year. Developed countries, about 50% go on to the tertiary education. Tertiary education is after secondary school, so that's college. Developing countries, about 20% of the children don't complete primary school. Primary school is elementary school. Individualistic cultural values such as independence and self-expression. So you have individualistic cultures. That's what we have in the United States. You also have collectivistic cultures around the world. That's where cultural values such as obedience and group harmony are important to the population. We have traditional cultures around the world. They tend to be rural cultures that adhere more closely to historical traditions than urban people. And a good way to think about this is not only indigenous cultures in the United States, but also the Amish. And of course, the Amish are Anabaptists. And there are a number of Anabaptists in the United States other than the Amish. There's the Hutterites and the Mennonites, the Moravians. They're all Anabaptists. I'm sure there's more of them that I'm missing. But I've lived around Hutterites, Amish. I grew up around Amish people in Indiana, and we had a colony of Hutterites that lived right down the road from us in Montana. And then in Mississippi, when we lived in Mississippi, there was a colony of Mennonites where I lived. As interesting as that was. A little bit different. They make their own clothes. Amish don't drive, but Mennonites and Hutterites do. Not that that's important. Globalization, increasing connections between different parts of the world. Worldwide variation in population and income levels. The developing countries are all in red, and according to this, Mexico is not a developing country. Okay. But the rest of Central America and almost all of South America, except for Chile, are developing countries. All of Africa, most of South Asia, they're saying that Russia is a developing country. That's interesting. This is Indonesia. These are those islands. These are the Indonesian islands. Malaysia. This is Malaysia. There you go. Japan's a developed country. South Korea is a developed country. New Zealand and Australia, United States, Canada, and the European countries, and Turkey and Greece. There you go. And all the Scandinavian countries. It's Finland, Sweden, and Norway. That's Iceland. Anyway, there you go. 82% of the population, 18% of the population lives in developed countries. 82% live in developing countries. Majority culture sets norms and standards, whatever the majority culture is. In the United States, it tends to be the white culture. Contexts have to do with settings and circumstances. Socioeconomic status, social class, including educational level, income level, and occupational status. Gender expectations of male and female roles. Of course, we have lots of different bifurcations of males and females, non-binary. What did I hear today? It was a restroom. It said gals and guys. No, that's not right. Guys and gals and our non-binary pals. That's what it said. As curious as that is. Anyway, ethnicity, cultural origin and traditions, race, religion, and language. And of course, the question of transgender, gender has become a huge issue. And it mostly has to do with athletics, and it has to do with where do you get to go to the bathroom, as interesting as all that is. Worldwide variations in population and income. Developed countries have a lot more money, of course, and developing countries have less. 55% of the world's GDP comes from the developed countries. Remember, it's only 18%, and only 44.6% comes from the developing countries, and they represent 82% of the population, world population. One of the major arguments in psychology and biology are genes more important in dictating behavior than environment within which someone grows up. So is it nature or nurture? Is it the environment, or is it your genetic structure? The nature versus nurture debate, of course. Um, Continuing ideas in psychology, continuity is the continuous, smooth progression of developmental phenomenon across a lifespan, such as friendship that starts at Head Start and lasts into adulthood. That would be something that was continuous, as curious as that is. Discontinuity is where there are abrupt shifts in development. Puberty and sexual maturation is such a discontinuity. While people grow from infancy to puberty, the change into adulthood tends to be fairly abrupt. And as you can see, the difference in the way that you look is quite extreme. Universality refers to the same things happening to everyone at the same time in the same way. Puberty hits everyone at about the same time, about somewhere between age 10 and age 16. The ability to learn hits everyone around age 5 and 6 and lasts, of course, a lifetime. And so if you look at the primary grades in Africa, the first grade is always around age 5. 5 or 6. Same way in South America, same way in the United States, in Europe, in Russia, and in China. Everyone starts school at about the same age, and that's universality. And as you can see, all of these kids are just about the same size. This is a first grade class. Looks pretty good. There's a junior high class. Well, it's a sixth grade class. You got the six right there, sixth grade class. And everybody's still about the same size. That's the teacher. She's the tall one. There's a high school class. Brecksville. I think it's in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. And everybody's about the same height. Everybody's gone through puberty. You can see it. You can't see anybody that is prepubescent. There's the teacher, and all the girls have developed as much as they've developed. All the boys, of course, are starting to shave and whatnot. And that's what you look like as an adult. You look like all the Magic Mike guys. There's your college class. And these are all traditional students. Traditional students go right from high school into college. So these are kids in their early 20s, late teens and early 20s. This is before everybody had a beard. So there you go. That guy's got one. Scruffy. I wonder if that's his sister or if that's his girlfriend. I don't know. They look kind of alike, don't they? Anyway, context-specific development refers to the fact that differences in people may have to do with the environment in which they develop. This theory purports that there is a complex, intricate interaction between the individual and their environment that may change the outcome. Of course, if you were living in Appalachia, then potentially you would have had to, in the early 1900s, you potentially would have had to go to work as a child, sorting coal. These are kids that are digging coal. These are kids that are actual coal miners at a very, very young age. Does it change things that happen to you? Certainly. You're going to develop differently if you come from this environment than if you come from this environment. Okay, this was an interesting case back in the 20 teens. This was a case of affluenza. I'm going to read you the story. This is the kid. His name is Ethan Couch, and that's his mom. We're going to get to see these two again in just a second. Ethan Couch, at age 16, killed 4 people while driving under the influence in 2013 in Texas. Couch, while intoxicated and under the influence of drugs, was driving on a restricted license and speeding in a residential area when he lost control of his vehicle. 4 people were killed in the collision and 9 people were injured. He was under suspension for his license because he had been caught intoxicated, parked in his truck, intoxicated, with a naked 14-year-old female beside him when he was 15 years old. And this is a year later. So what the hell's going on with this kid? What's wrong with him? Couch was indicted on 4 counts of intoxication, manslaughter for recklessly driving under the influence. Couch was sentenced to 10 years of probation, subsequently ordering him to undergo therapy at an inpatient facility. Couch's attorneys argued that Couch had affluenza and needed rehabilitation instead of prison, arguing that Couch had no understanding of boundaries, as his affluent parents had never given him any boundaries. Affluenza. He suffered from the fact that his parents spoiled him all of his life. That was his defense. So what happens next? After a video was posted online purporting to show Couch drinking at a party, Couch became the subject of a manhunt. On December 28, 2015, authorities detained Couch and his mother in the Mexican resort city of Puerto Vallarta. And of course, this is his dad, who had been arrested several times. And this is his mom, who'd also been arrested several times. And this is the kid, Ethan Couch. His mother decided that this was not right for them to put him on probation and to restrict his movements. So she decided to run away to Mexico with her little boy. Oh, is that it? Yeah, I guess that's it. Okay. Yeah, I thought that was really kind of interesting. Affluenza, the fact that he was raised in an environment where he had no boundaries. And he was wealthy, his parents were both wealthy, and his parents acted just like he did. And that's the way he turned out. He gets out of jail next year. He gets out of jail in 2024. They gave him, what did they give him? 180 days for each person he killed. They kept putting him on probation, and he kept violating his probation. So they would arrest him. He'd run away. They'd catch him. Anyway, the judge finally decided to give him 180 days for each person he initially killed. He crashed into there was a broken down car on the side of the road, and there were all these people that were trying to help. And he crashed into the car and killed 4 people. He injured 9, not himself, but he injured 9 people. 2 people in his own pickup truck were injured as well. And of course, he got everything he ever wanted, as cute as that is. And there's his mom. Used to getting away with things, entitled people. And of course, having too much money can be just as bad as not having any money at all. Maybe worse. Scientists feel that there are 4 interactive forces influencing the way that an individual is going to turn out. There are biological forces, psychological forces, sociocultural forces, and life cycle forces. Biological forces, these forces include genetic factors such as height, weight, longevity, sensitivity to environmental factors, health-related factors such as being exposed to different pathogens or the consumption of toxins, alcohol, tobacco, or drugs that might deplete one's immune system. And of course, some people have immune systems that aren't as strong as other people. You start putting toxins in your system and your immune system might get weaker. And then people die young, and people go, oh my goodness, it's such a horrible thing that they died young. My 2 nieces that have their autoimmune diseases, they'll probably not make it much past the next 10 years. You know who can blame anybody but themselves? I mean, are they ruining the fact that they were spoiled little kids when they were younger? I'm guessing they don't even acknowledge that. Most people think that it's not fair. Whatever happens to them, it's not fair. If negative things happen to them, it's not fair. I gave up cigarettes and now I'm dying of lung cancer. This isn't right. I thought I thought that all that went away. Well, it does, but you for 15 years you smoked cigarettes. I had a good friend that died of a heart attack. I don't know when it first started at Dene College. I first started in 2016. I think it was in 2017 he died of a heart attack. I had had a heart attack. Let's see, that was 2017. I had a heart attack in 2010, and I had a lot of stoppage in my heart. Mine was completely different from his. He smoked cigarettes and ate a lot of fatty foods. Mine had to do with I was depressed because I just gotten fired, and the fact that I was a weightlifter, and it kind of stretched out my blood vessels in my heart. Anyway, okay, so but I was able to live through my inclusion was more severe than his, and I lived through my heart attack, and he never recovered from his, even though he had less blockage in his heart. And the reason was because of his lifestyle. And the reason I'm still here is because of my lifestyle. Psychological forces, these forces include the way that we see the world, our perception. It includes our cognitive capacity, our intelligence. It includes our personality and the emotions that we bring to our interpretation of the world. The more negative you are, and I tend to be a fairly positive person, but when I got fired from my job, it really upset me, and that's when I had my heart attack. So my personality is usually fairly upbeat. I'll try to maintain that until you guys dump all the grading on me on the last day of class or whatever. Sociocultural influences. The sociocultural forces involve the world and the people around us influencing how we develop our culture, our society, and our ethnic factors. Now, the reality is, if we wander around the world, what we see in a lot of countries is people living together who are ethnically similar. Okay, so we go to China, a lot of Chinese people. Are there a lot of Caucasians in living in China? No, no. Are there a lot of Africans living in China? Nope, nope. They're all Asian, pretty much Asian. Now they can tell the difference between all the different divisions in their ethnic group. But for us to go to China and look at them, we would say, yeah, you guys all look pretty. You're all very similar. You're all about the same ethnicity. Whereas you can go to Chicago and you're walking down the street and a Hispanic fella passes you, then an African American passes you, and maybe an indigenous person passes you, and then an Asian and a couple white people, and then you see somebody and it's a priest and you try to and you start talking to him and he's Irish and all of this stuff. We have a lot of diversity in the United States, not so much in other places. 95% of all the people living in Japan are Japanese. They are ethnically Japanese. They're not Caucasians. They're not black people. They're Japanese. They're not Chinese. They're not Koreans. They're Japanese. Anyway, so this is what we see around most of the world. Even in Russia, they don't have the diversity in Russia that we have in the United States, and certainly not in Europe either. Life cycle forces, people change as they age. Life cycle forces will have different influences at different times of a person's life. For example, a pregnant teen will have different concerns than a woman who is pregnant in her 40s. And that was my daughter. She had my grandson when she was 43. She had just turned 43, which is kind of dangerous. This is an older couple, and the woman is pregnant. Then these are teenagers, and he's certainly proud of himself at carrying his beer. And there's his rodeo buckle. He's showing off. He's also showing off the fact that he has a blonde girlfriend. Trust me, blondes are more fun, is what his shirt says. And he's got his Chicago Cubs hat on. Anyway, and he's pretty proud of himself. She's proud of herself too. I don't know. They look underage to me. I don't know what he's doing with that beer. Anyway, so there you go. So the pregnant teen probably has different thoughts than the pregnant 40 plus year old individual, mainly because it's a little bit more difficult for the older woman to have a baby, unless she's had lots of babies before. The first theory that tried to explain human development was the evolutionary theory of Charles Darwin. Darwin looked at biological processes and attempted to explain how humans adapted to their environment. Darwin felt that all creatures, including humans, must maintain a fitness for the environment they live in or adapt to fit in the environment. And this is a perfect example. He's talking about Computer Club. This guy just does not fit into the environment. Sometimes things happen, and this just happened in Florida with the hurricane down there, and in California with all the flooding. This kind of stuff happens. We have to adapt to our environment. If you live in the desert, you got to figure out where to find water. If you live if you live on the coast, man, sometimes the water's you're gonna get a storm surge, and potentially it's gonna wash your house out to sea. We've got to adapt to our environment. We don't really have a choice. We are humans, but we have to adapt to our environment. Adaptation merely means change. It doesn't imply progress or improvement. It just means adapting to what is happening. Okay. Psychologists today have adapted Darwin's theories into a field known as evolutionary psychology or sociobiology. They see genetics as the prime driving force in social behavior. They do not discount the interaction between heredity and the environment. And this is a change of the human structure. This is an early hominid, looked more like an ape than a human. And this is one later on. And this is who we are today, the Homo sapiens sapiens. We are Homo sapiens sapiens, and our brains are big. They're 1,300 cc's. This is the early Homo sapien. It's only not a Homo sapien. He has 1,000 cc's, so his brain's not quite as big. This is not the human with the largest brain. The human with the largest brain was Neanderthal man, whose brain was averaged about 1,750 cc's. The ultimate goal of all individual behavior and developmental change is survival of their genetic material. All organisms adapt their behavior to ensure the survival of the basic elements of life. Sociobiologists look at different aspects of social behavior to determine if it is adaptive. Altruism, being nice to people, competition. Does that mean that the best individual will be able to reproduce? Socialization, does that allow for us to reproduce? Mating behavior, which does allow us to reproduce, but what's going to happen in this situation where she's being hit on by 3 men at the same time? And of course, communication. Probably the guy that's going to get to go home with her, if anybody gets to go home with her, it's going to be due to his pattern, due to his way of talking to her and communicating with her. And of course, this starts when we are in school, in primary school and secondary school. As we go through puberty, we learn all of these things. And then eventually, of course, we figure out how to reproduce. The reality is that humans are animals, and we need to reproduce in order for us to still be here in the future. Ethology is the study of how innate behavior and hereditary factors influence developmental changes. One example would be Noam Chomsky's LAD, the language acquisition device. It's a genetic predisposition to learn language to facilitate social interaction. And this is Noam Chomsky right here. He's still alive, by the way. He's in his 90s. And of course, communication has to do with our ability to learn languages and to adapt to a new language. I was talking to my friend from Bangladesh yesterday, and it was really kind of interesting. His English has improved since he went back to Bangladesh, and that may be because he is forcing himself to, well, he's speaking Bangla, which is the language of Bangladesh, but he's also trying to teach his siblings to speak better English. And because of that, he's sometimes I have a hard time understanding him because he talks too fast. But it's really kind of interesting because I understood him better yesterday than I have for months or for years, I guess. He's a PhD in IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology. Anyway, he wants to come back to the United States. Right now, he's dealing with his ill mother. Another example of ethology would be Konrad Lorenz's work showing that inducing the mothering instinct in a species leads to survivability in the offspring. And this is Lorenz right here, who has become the mother of these two geese. And that's the mothering instinct, her wanting to protect her cubs. When I was working in Montana, I had a student who started making more and more money. And the reason he did is because he had raised cattle that produced mothers that actually took care of their calves. Montana is a relatively harsh environment. It's very, very cold in the wintertime. The more the mother takes care of the calves, the more the calves are more likely to survive. And what he did, he developed a strain of cows. They're some kind of Hereford, who are really good mothers. And because of that, the infant mortality, the calf mortality for the cows is much lower. Their mortality, they don't die at a young age like some of the other cows, the Anguses and whatnot. Anyway, really kind of fascinating. So he started making money hand over fist because everybody wanted his bulls to reproduce with their heifers. An example of Lorenz's work is research that has found that when women are shown pictures of a baby, they have greater pupillary dilation than men do. Eckhard Hess in 1962 concluded that women may have a greater biological predisposition to respond to babies than men do. The psychodynamic theory, the first developmental theory was the psychodynamic theory. Psychodynamic theories view the individual as solitary against the rest of the world, and that was Sigmund Freud's idea. The first psychodynamic theory was Freud's, well, that's what I just said, his psychosexual theory that purported that man developed due to his sexual drives. And this was also known as his psychosexual developmental theory. Erikson refuted Freud and said that humans were driven by social needs, not by individual social needs, individual sexual needs. And this he called the psychosocial developmental theory, which was really kind of interesting because they were contemporaries of one another. And actually, Erikson worked with Freud in Vienna. The first stage of the psychosexual theory is the oral stage, when the baby's focus must be on its mouth or it will starve to death. The first social crisis in the psychosocial theory is trust versus mistrust that must be resolved at birth. So the child will either trust the parent to be there when they are needed, or they will mistrust people for the rest of their lives. The second stage of the psychosexual theory is the anal stage between years 1 and 3, when the child focuses on potty training to become a responsible member of society. The second crisis in the psychosocial theory is autonomy versus shame, and shame and doubt, when the child must learn to become an independent person. And that's actually what's happening with both individuals. They're learning to become independent people. So this individual will either become autonomous, or they will feel shame because they have to be around their parents all the time. This individual will either figure out how to go to the bathroom when they have the urge, or they won't be able to go out into society. They won't be able to develop autonomy. The third stage of the psychosexual developmental theory is the phallic stage between 3 and 6, when the child realizes that they are either a boy or a girl. The third crisis in the psychosocial theory is initiative versus guilt, when the child learns to try new things or they don't. And if they don't, of course, they will not be able to become an individual. They won't be able to break away from their family. They'll have to stay with their family for the rest of their lives. Now, one of the things you need to remember is the psychosexual theory was developed in the middle of the 19th century, or at the end of the 19th century, actually. And Freud's ideas were very contemporary. And at that time, of course, there were only the concept was only males and females. There was no non-binary concept. There was no transgender concept. So don't attack Freud for not being able to see through his crystal ball into the future. That doesn't make a lot of sense. This is all historical. The fourth stage of Freud's psychosexual theory deals with a time of sexual complacency between the age of 6 until puberty, called the latency stage, when nothing's going on. The next crisis in Erikson's psychosocial theory is industry versus inferiority, in the same age range when the child learns to compete. And if they don't learn to compete, then they won't be able to survive in society. Freud's last stage is the genital stage, when the individual emerges as a reproductive being. Erikson's adolescent crisis is identity versus identity confusion, when teenagers try to discover a comfortable persona for the rest of their lives. Who am I going to be? And of course, you've seen this in your own area. You've seen this in high school where people go off to Phoenix, or they go off to Flagstaff, or Los Angeles, and when they come back, they're not the same person. They are trying to find a persona that fits who they feel like they are. Or maybe they go down to Phoenix and they become like the people in Phoenix. And when they come back, they're not traditional anymore. That's the identity versus identity confusion. But the psychosocial theory continues throughout the rest of the individual's life. Erikson's next crisis faces the question of marriage or bachelorhood, intimacy versus isolation. And of course, if you've got hair that looks like this and you wear shoes like this, then probably you're going to be a bachelor all your life. That's in England, by the way. It's not in the United States. The middle adulthood crisis that Erikson feels that people go through is generativity versus stagnation. During the crisis, the individual has to decide whether to help and mentor the younger generation or maintain a selfish lifestyle. And of course, her note says, "I hate my job." And this guy doesn't look like he hates his job. He just wants to help. Erikson's crises continue right to the end of life. The last crisis an individual faces is integrity versus despair. Does one see one's life as satisfactory, or are they a failure? And of course, it really doesn't matter. Well, it does, of course, but you're going to die anyway. It's not really something that can keep you alive. Or if you felt good about yourself, you'd probably live longer than if you didn't feel good about yourself. Learning theory, so the psychodynamic theory is not the only theory. Learning theory is considered a theory that is part of development because it explains how people gain knowledge and experience. This was so there. The psychodynamic theory is more of a European idea, and the reason it was in Europe is because they were thinking more philosophically. In the United States, we were trying to figure out how to make people work harder and produce more products. And so we came up with a learning theory. Of course, it's an American theory because it has to do with productivity. Two individuals who purport the learning theory are B.F. Skinner and John B. Watson. They suggested that change in a child's behavior through conditioning. We could condition these people to be better workers. That's really what they were looking for. Behaviorism, Watson theorized that children could be conditioned into anything he wanted, but Skinner actually proved that he was right. Skinner developed the Skinner box for use with animal subjects that was eventually expanded into a human version. And this is what the human version looks like. The kid plays with this thing. He can do whatever he wants. He's learning things. They put the learning tools in there and they do it. This was paper just in case they wet their pants or something. As weird as that is. He raised his daughter in the Skinner box. His daughter just died not very long ago, and she really ripped him for the fact that he was such a cold fish. The human version of a Skinner box is in the form of a crib, but it actually never caught on, of course. I mean, you never saw these in anybody's home except for Skinner purporting it. Skinner's use of rewards and punishment were referred to as operant conditioning. Behaviorism, Skinner felt that by reinforcing or rewarding a behavior, a controller could increase the likelihood of the behavior occurring again. On the other hand, by punishing a behavior, the controller would make it less likely to occur again. And of course, that was what he said. He said we should raise our children, rewarding them for what we liked and punishing them for what we didn't like. Social learning theory. Albert Bandura is the author of the social learning theory. This is Albert Bandura. He's Canadian. Not that that's important. Bandura feels that people learn and copy people who are around them through imitation, which he referred to as observational learning. Bandura feels that people construct themselves through rewards, punishments, and imitation, and then view the outcome as self-efficacy. And of course, this is his famous experiment where an adult was beating on Bozo with a mallet, and then when they let the little people come in there, they were 24 months. They were 2 years to 5 years old. They imitated what they saw the adults doing, and here's a little girl whacking Bozo with a wooden mallet. I actually had one of these when I was a kid. For some reason, my mother was trying to teach me how to box. I had an older brother. I'm not sure what the purpose was. One Christmas, they gave us boxing gloves. We had, I think we had 3 sets. I don't know, but there were 4 boys in the family, and that was not a good idea. We did boxing things and split each other's lips and bloodied each other's noses. That was not a good idea. The cognitive development theory was developed by Jean Piaget from Switzerland. He spoke French and he wrote in French, and for that reason, he wrote his theories in the 1920s, 1930s, but it didn't come to the United States until the 1970s after World War II. Piaget based his theory because he wrote it in French, and you'd have to understand the history of the United States and France to understand why we weren't reading French theories. Piaget based his theory on the cognitive development of children, in other words, the way their brains developed. Piaget's first stage is a sensory motor stage and begins at birth and runs through age 2. In this stage, the infant and toddler's knowledge is based on their senses and motor skills. Piaget's second stage runs from toddlerhood until the beginning of elementary school, 2 to 6, and involves a child's first attempt at reading and using numbers. This stage is referred to as the preoperational thought. The third stage runs from the first grade through junior high school and involves the continued maturation of applying experiences to the logical operations of their knowledge base and is referred to as concrete operational thought. The last stage is formal operational thought, and it begins in early adolescence and runs through the rest of an individual's life. This stage involves the ability to think abstractly and deal with hypothetical situations, like Harry Potter. Vygotsky's theory. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist who felt that the environment dictated what and how a child should be taught. Vygotsky's sociocultural theory saw beliefs, customs, and skills of the culture being passed from adults to the young. This included formal education. So adults know things and they pass it on to their children. And this is Vygotsky, and that's Vygotsky. He died just after World War II. But he wrote his theories in the 1930s. Now you may wonder, why in the world didn't we just pick these up? Well, that's because they were communists, and we weren't reading anything from Russians until after the wall went down in 1989. As stupid as that sounds. Yuri Bronfenbrenner was actually an American, even though he had such a foreign name. Developed the ecological theory of development, born in New York City, by the way. This theory sees the child as a center of an ever-expanding system of influence that helps to create the person that the child will become. In the center of the concentric circle is the microsystem. The microsystem is composed of the child and their parents. The next ring of influence in the concentric circle is the mesosystem, meso meaning middle. This ring is closest to the child because the child has direct contact with it, their school, their friends, their extended family. The next ring of influence in the concentric circle is the exosystem, meaning outer. This ring influences a child but may not make contact with the child. Such things as parents' place of employment, the government and their social policies, and the parent's social network may or may not make contact with the child. Now, why we have a chicken here, I'm not exactly sure, but the federal government would be part of this exosystem. The outer ring of the system is the macrosystem, macro meaning large. This circle influences the child, but is mostly abstract influence on has abstract influence on the individual. Such things as historical events, culture, and ethnic group influence the child, but influences the child, but is not something that the child has any influence over. And of course, this is my brother in Afghanistan in 2005. I'm not exactly sure why I put that picture in there. And this is at a powwow. This is the individual who won the grass dance. And he's doing his last dance. And here's somebody that lost. Happy that this individual won. This is at the Hayes Powwow on Fort Belknap. Once again. Okay, macro system. You can't change culture. You can't change historical events. My brother could never pretend that he never went to Afghanistan, even though we're not there anymore. And there's his driver. And that's my brother with his gun on his thigh. Humanistic theories were developed from the work of Carl Rogers. Rogers saw the individual as a dynamic force that has the power to seek their own self-fulfillment by setting goals, meeting inner needs, and expressing creative energies. Humanism. The humanism was developed to combat the Freudian concept of unconscious drives controlling our behavior. It also argues that the environment does not dictate who the individual is going to be. So we can't dress our kids in what's going to happen in the future. Besides Rogers, one of the leading humanists was Abraham Maslow. Maslow recognized that people were motivated to seek their full potential, which he labeled self-actualization. Maslow arranged people's needs in a hierarchy that is normally arranged in a pyramidal structure. And this is his Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Your physiological needs first, your safety and security needs second, your love and belongingness needs third, self-esteem, feelings within yourself, and then, of course, you have to achieve all of these other 4 stages before you can get to self-actualization. It was Maslow's idea that before people could achieve a higher level on the pyramid of needs, they had to take care of all the lower levels, for all the lower needs first. Unless one's physiological needs are taken care of, safety is inconsequential. It is easy to observe Maslow's need structure in the plight of the refugees flooding into Europe from Africa and the Middle East. Physiological needs are the most important. Safety needs are not necessary until survival needs are taken care of. The personal needs are secondary to basic survival. Researchers who have worked with Maslow's hierarchy of needs see people changing their needs as they grow older. Infants and toddlers need their physiological needs taken care of. As children get older, their safety needs are met. Adolescents are stuck in a time seeking self-esteem and belongingness. Only adults have fulfilled their lower needs and can seek self-actualization. One last theory is that of John Bowlby, as proven by Mary Ainsworth. Bowlby developed a theory that used an infant's attachment pattern to its parents as a basis for future human interaction. Ainsworth developed a test to determine the type of attachment the child displayed with their parents and came up with 4 major types of attachment: secure attachment, avoidant insecure attachment, disorganized disoriented attachment, and preoccupied insecure attachment. Lifespan is multidirectional, and we'll get more into Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby later on. Lifespan is multidirectional. The lifespan not only involves growth, but decline as well. Aspects of life continue to expand, such as your vocabulary, while others slowly decline over time, like your reaction time. As you can imagine, these individuals are not going to react as rapidly as either of these 2 individuals. Plasticity. Humans have the ability to adapt to different circumstances. Our fates as humans are not cast in stone. We have the ability to optimize our time or truncate it. And this has to do with somebody that is a smoker. This is what she looked like at age 20. Her face started to wrinkle because of her smoking, starting at age 30. And then as she got older, the wrinkles became worse and worse and worse due to the fact that she smoked. Historical context. We all live in a time, and each era in time is marked by the history of that time. While your parents lived most post-Vietnam and 25-cent gallons of gas, you're living through 9/11, Iraq and Afghanistan, and $4 gallons of gas. This is, of course, World War II, and this is what the military looked like in Afghanistan. That's my brother again. That's him right there. I don't know what he's doing carrying his. He was a colonel. He shouldn't have had a rifle. He didn't need a rifle. Multiple causation. There are any number of things that allow us to turn out the way that we do. Biological forces, psychological forces, sociocultural forces, and life cycle forces. The reason I have these two individuals here, these individuals had very similar childhoods. This individual moved when they were young. They moved from the South into New York City so that their mother could find a job. They didn't have a father. He didn't have a father watching him. Joined the military at a young age, and eventually he got into trouble. This individual obviously got into trouble in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but his life was very similar to this individual's life. This individual continued to, they both would skip school because people made fun of them. His father was a workaholic and he never saw him. Um, uh, he was pretty much left on his own, just like this individual was. The difference was he didn't join the army. So, despite the fact that they came from very similar environments, this is Bill Gates, and this is the Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin of John Kennedy. So, why did they turn out differently, even though they had similar lifestyles or similar life forces in their young age? And the answer is we don't know. Was it genetics that made Lee Harvey Oswald an assassin? Was it genetics that made Bill Gates the richest man in the world? I don't think he is anymore. Somebody else is. Developmental psychologists are interested in how individuals change over time. For this reason, it is important that they select research designs that will inform them about the change. And this is, of course, Kristen Stewart. Anyway, that's her as a child. That's her today. She is now living with a woman. I think has she is now a lesbian, but used to date Johnny Depp. This is Priscilla Presley. She used to be married to Elvis Presley. This is what she looked like around the time she married him. This is what she looks like today. This is Madonna. This is what she looked like when she first hit the rock charts. This is what she looks like today. Bruce Willis, this is him graduating from high school. And now he is suffering from a form of mutism, and he can't act anymore. It's a form of, well, it's not really Alzheimer's disease. Anyway, he can't act anymore. This is what he looks like. He's bald-headed now. There we go, George Bush. This is him when he started, when he first became president, and this is him the last year of his presidency. Actually, it was the 7th year of his presidency. He was president for 8 years. Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, was a bodybuilder, and this is what he looks like today. Measurement, systematic observation. Systematic observation involves observing people or other animals and recording everything of interest that they do. A naturalistic observation is the observation of people or other creatures as they spontaneously behave in their real-life environments. A structured observation is the observation of people or other creatures in an artificial setting to elicit a behavior. And that's what happened back here. That's what happened back. Where are you? There we go. That's what happened back here. This is a systematic observation. This was in a laboratory. There we go. Here, this will make you have a epileptic seizure. Oh, there we go. Systematic observation. Actually, this is naturalistic observation, but this is systematic observation. Experimental studies. An experiment is a systematic way of observing behavior where variables are manipulated so that an experimental variable can be observed. The manipulated variables are called independent variables, and the measured variable is referred to as the dependent variable. Another method of accumulating data is to have people answer questions or record their thoughts. This can be done with surveys or with diaries. Physiological measures are measurements of physiological activity using various forms of instrumentation such as EEGs, electroencephalogram, PET scans, positron emission tomography scans, or functional MRIs, functional magnetic resonance imaging. And this is an MRI, and this is a PET scan. No, or is it the other way around? No, this is a functional MRI. Both of them show where the activity in the brain is taking place. PET scans and functional MRIs. Once a researcher selects the method of testing, they must show that it is reliable and valid to be used on this population. Reliability refers to the test's ability to measure at the same level on a consistent basis. Validity refers to the measurement actually measuring what they are supposed to measure. Research is generally done on a large number of participants to increase the acceptance of the results as generalizable to a larger population. The population is the total number of people who qualify for the research. The sample is the number of people who are actually in the research from the population. Correlational study. In a correlational study, a researcher investigates the relationship between variables. The results of a correlational study are normally measured by calculating a correlational coefficient, or plotting the relationship along an axis that runs from +1 to -1. So if it's on the negative side, it means that there is no correlation. And the closest to 1 it is, the closest it is to absolute. If it's a positive number, then it means there is a correlation. And the closest it is to 1 plus, the stronger the correlation between the two. So if I was trying to prove that peanut butter caused migraine headaches, and I got a minus 46 correlational coefficient, it would mean that peanut butter had nothing at all to do with migraine headaches. However, if I had a positive 0.46, that would mean that there is a correlation. It's not very strong, but there is still a correlation. So the higher the number, the stronger the correlation, or the more it proves that it doesn't exist. Longitudinal studies involve observing and or testing the same individuals or groups at various times over their lifetimes. An example of a longitudinal study would be the Kauai longitudinal study by Werner and Smith. These two researchers began following at-risk babies born in Kauai in 1955. The research continues to this day, it really does, and both of them are still alive. As a matter of fact, when I did my research for my PhD, I used an instrument used by Werner. And I wrote her a letter, even though she's retired, and asked her if I could use her method, if I could use her survey, her type of survey, and she said it was okay. So I've actually communicated with Werner. But longitudinal studies such as Werner and Smith do have their problems. Because the individual takes the same test over time, the practice effect comes into play. It is terribly expensive, and the researcher must be supported in their research. But, as I said, it still goes on. I think Werner's was at University of California, Davis. Cross-sectional studies are studies that measure people at different times of life, but instead of following the same people over time, in a cross-sectional study, the people of different ages are measured at the same time. And this is what I did in my own research. I tested everybody on a select day, but there were people in there who were 18 years old. There were people in there that were 80 years old. And so I could say, well, this is how 80-year-olds react to this, and this is how 18-year-olds react to this. Cross-sectional studies tend to be affected by differences between age groups. This is referred to as the cohort effect, as people raised in the same era are likely to have similar ideas. Just like somebody who was raised in the 60s and 70s listens to 60s and 70s music. They may not listen to anything modern. I don't. But somebody who was raised in between 2000, who was raised between 2000 and 2023, these individuals would listen to different music. Why? Because, well, maybe they listen to the old stuff, but probably they'd like their own stuff better. And that's known as the cohort effect. They would certainly dress that way. And if somebody was born in 1949 like me, maybe they hate their cell phones and they don't look at them constantly, but it's somebody that was born between 2000 and 2023. They're constantly scrolling through all of their stuff to make sure they don't miss anything. And that's the end of the lecture. So if anybody has any questions about anything, just give me a call or attend the office hours. You can ask me questions then. You can email me. I'm always available. I try to be pleasant, which doesn't always happen. I do get into trouble from time to time. So if you have any questions about anything, I'll be glad to answer them. I am here for you guys. The only reason I'm still teaching is because of my students. So it's not like I'm going to wander off and start doing research tomorrow afternoon. That ain't going to happen. I'm a teacher, and I'll be here for you guys. So if you need anything, just give me a call. If you you have any questions, you just want to talk, that's fine. You saw when my office hours are. So I'll talk to you guys next week.